Good noon to all of you. I am Gopi Dervaliya. Today, I, Insiyafatema Alvani and Gayatri Nimavat, we three are going to discuss one of the most famous plays, Waiting for Godot, written by Samuel Beckett. So first, I will discuss what topics we are going to present today. About the author Samuel Beckett, historical context and the theatre of absurd, existentialism in Waiting for Godot. Characters, there are four main characters in this play, Vladimir Estragon, Pozo and Lucky. Major themes of the play, symbols, structure of the play, settings, psychoanalytical reading of the play, and various interpretation of Waiting for Godot like religious interpretation and political interpretation, memory's role in the play and tragic comedy. About the author, Samuel Beckett was born on 1906 and died on 1989. He was an Irish playwright, novelist, poet, and winner of the 1969 Nobel Prize in Literature. He wrote mainly in English and French. Samuel Beckett, also a theatre director, and he is one of the most influential writers of the 20th century. He went to Paris for the first time in 1928. He would spend most of his adult life there to teach English. After the war, Beckett settled in Paris and began a prolific period as a writer. His most famous play, Waiting for Godot, first performed in Paris in 1953. After Waiting for Godot, Beckett went on to write Endgame, Krebs' Last Step, and Happy Days. While most of his work was written in French and later translated into English by Beckett. In the 1950s, Beckett also published three novels, including Molloy. He also began a relationship with Susan and whom he eventually married in 1961. Beckett died in 1989 and is buried in Paris. Beckett wanted to send the message through his plays that the absurdity the society was holding was simply a result of their self-conscious of state mind, and that each individual could only pass the time as painlessly as possible until they approach the end of their lives. Key facts. Title Waiting for Godot, author Samuel Beckett. The original French text was composed between 9 October 1948 and 29 January 1949. Type of work, play. Original language, French. Genre, tragicomedy and absurdist fiction. Setting. The time period of the play is unclear and place a country road near a leafless tree. Historical context and the theatre of absurd. Theatre of the absurd refers to a literary movement in drama popular throughout European countries from 1940s to 1989. Absurdist playwright adhered to the theories of French Algerian philosopher Albert Camus. In particular, his essay The Myth of Sisyphus, published in 1942. In this essay, Camus introduces his philosophy of the absurd, in which he argues that man's quest for meaning and truth is a futile endeavor. Existentialism in Waiting for Godot. Waiting for Godot is a highly celebrated existential play. Existential philosophy says that we human beings simply exist in a world that does not have any overarching moral order or meaning. We are not essentially good or bad. We are what we make of ourselves, what we think of ourselves, and we are what we choose to believe. Questions such as life, death, the meaning of human existence, and the place of God in that existence are among them. The theories of existentialism assert that conscious reality is very complex and without an objective or universally known value. In Waiting for Godot, all the four characters, Vladimir, Estragon, Lucky and Pozo, discuss the problems of existence and also questions their own existence in an absurd way. As is shown in the play, they are waiting for one unknown person called Godot and at an unknown place. All of them suffer from meaninglessness, isolation, and frustration. As it happens, no Godot comes, but ironically, a messenger boy comes and who informs that Godot will not come. And these characters become fed up of waiting repeatedly. The word waiting is universalized in the play, which is an essential feature of any existential play. There are several existentialist elements present throughout the play, and one is very evident in Estragon's words: "Nothing happens, nobody comes, nobody goes. It's awful." Characters. There are characters of the waiting for Godot, Estragon, Vladimir, Pozo, and Lucky. So first, Vladimir. He is one of the most stupid character of the play. We can say that Vladimir is not perfect man, but his memory is far better than Estragon. He is a protagonist of the play Waiting for Godot. We see the absurdity of the human existence through the conversation of both characters, Vladimir and Estragon's. Vladimir seems to be the more responsible and mature rather than Estragon. He reads the Bible and tells the stories from Bible. Estragon calls him Didi and the boy addresses him as Mr. Albert. Second is Estragon. Estragon wears boot and bowler hat. He seems weak and helpless, always looking for Vladimir's protection. Vladimir calls him Gogo. He has chronically poor memory. He spends most of his time trying to fall asleep, unless he is sleeping already. They demonstrates how human creates pointless and meaningless events in order to pass time. Next is Pozo. Pozo is very clear and self-absorbed. He sees himself a good-like figure. He refers himself as the human species, and Vladimir and Estragon are the same species as him, of the same species as myself, of the same species as Pozo, made in God's image. Pozo first meet with Estragon and Vladimir. He says that I don't prefer to talk with people who deserve from poor background. And the fourth and last character is Lucky. He's a slave of Pozo and he follows his order because he wants respect from his master, like humans tries to impress God, to see that we are worth something. So who is Godot in this play? So Godot is a mysterious character of the play, which Vladimir and Estragon are waiting for. They don't really know who he is. They never meet him, but they do know that they want something from him. Godot represents Beckett's pessimistic version of God, an absent savior who never comes to the help of those who are suffering on the earth. So I would like to call Insiyafatema Alvani for further discussion.
So in this part of presentation, I dealing with theme, symbol and structure of the play. So absurdity of existence. Waiting for Godot is a prime example of absurd play. According to absurd theater, human's existence is meaningless, it's purposeless. The term absurd was first used by Albert Camus in his famous work The Myth of Sisyphus. Now we are aware about Myth of Sisyphus and life of Albert Camus. This play reflects the absurdist position of post-Second World War. The term absurd theater is first coined by Martin Esslin, who was the strong exponent of the Albert Camus, who used to believe that best way to die is suicide. And in the play, we will see that Estragon is also believes that Suicide is the best way to die. Martin Esslin, in his book The Theatre of Absurd, claims that Waiting for Godot does not tell a story, it explores the static situation. This play explored the situation after post World War post Second World War, uncertainty of time. So time is the most important thing in the play, and the weight is the main subject of the play. And if we see this play as a Christian play, both characters, Estragon and Vladimir, are waiting for God, who promised salvation but never arrives. God will never come to people who suffers on the earth. All the characters are unsure of exactly when the play is taking place. In the beginning of Act 2, the growth of leaves on the tree, we see that in first act, tree was a leafless, and in second act, there are 4 or 5 leaves on the tree. It suggests a longer period of time has passed than one day. Characters are also seem to be trapped by time, endlessly repeating essentially the same day again and again. Uncertainty of time in the play contributes to the feeling of meaninglessness. So, purposelessness of life. None of the characters has a meaningful purpose, and all the conversation between Vladimir and Estragon is also purposeless. Both characters are waiting for Godot, but fact is that Godot never arrives, renders their waiting meaningless. Pozo and Lucky might seem to be traveling towards something, but their travel shown purposeless. The boy who delivered message from Godot also shown purposeless. So the all characters' activities are shown shows that life has no purpose. The theme of suffering. Play presents the physical, mental, and emotional suffering. Suffering is inseparable part of human life. Estragon beaten daily by some gang of ruffians. So Estragon has no home or any place to live. So that's why he always sleep in a ditch. And in a ditch, he was getting beaten up by some person, and he never remembered that who is that person and why they beat him. So they have nothing to eat either except carrots, turnips, and radishes. Pozo abuses Lucky and calls him pig. So here it presents the emotional suffering. People who belong from superior class or who has a power, they always abuses the people who belongs from lower class. Beckett's emphasis on the absurdity of human behavior shows both the tragic and comic sides of the existential crisis. So, symbolical significance in the play. The tree is a main important plot device where both characters are waiting for Godot. Tree symbolize so many things in the play. It symbolizes death because it's related with the Jesus crucifixion. Tree may represents the cross on which Jesus crucified. Or another interpretation is that both characters represent the thieves crucified along with Jesus. They have hope that Godot will come and resolve their problem. In first act, Tree portrays world as a barren and lifeless. It stands as a symbol of hope because in the end of play, it has a leaf. So at the end of play, Tree symbolizes the regeneration of life, and it's a religious point of view. It symbolizes the tree of knowledge. Raw vegetables in the play. So in the first act, when Estragon says that he is hungry and Vladimir provides him a carrot, and these are the dialogues from text. Is a carrot really a carrot, or is it just what we like to call it? Nothing you can do about it. So they are this carrot is a good comic relief in which both Vladimir and Estragon can't agree on the vegetable. It's a comical situation in the play, and they both are more interested in disagreement of that vegetable, and it's a meaningless conversation in the play. And they both are doing time pass to draw closer time when Godot will arrive and solve their problems. At first, they were bickering over the way the carrot tastes. They are referring to the same thing. It doesn't really matter who is right and who is wrong. So here he says, is a carrot really a carrot or something else? So we sometimes put a label on things, but that is not necessary. It's always true. Hats and boots. So each characters wear hat in the play. Hat represent thinking and inner conflict. Vladimir and Astragon exchange their hat with many times. There is no logical reason to this action, but it shows humor. And boots symbolize the daily life struggle. It also symbolizes the struggle of Astragon. And Astragon is the most affected by boots. He takes off and putting again them on. The bag. Lucky carries a bag. He doesn't put the bag down except when Pozo orders him to do something. This action shows the human tendency of enslavement and burden which are unnecessary. The relationship between Pozo and Lucky is shown as a capital and labor, master and slave. So bag symbolize the burden of time. The rope. Lucky is a slave. He tied with rope, holding both master and slave. This is the symbol of distance between the god and his slave. When Astragon and Vladimir tries to hang themselves with a cord, it breaks. They remind themselves tomorrow that they need to bring a rope. The slave is unable to escape because of this rope that bond them together. So, structure of the play. When we study Macbeth or any classical play, it has a triangle structure, but it's not a classical play, it's a modernist play. An absurd play has a circular structure of the play. Traditional play, in contrast, has an introduction of the characters and the exposition of them. There is a statement of the problem of the play in relation to its setting and characters. So furthermore, in a traditional play, the characters are developed and gradually we come to see the dramatist worldview. The play then rises to a climax and there is a conclusion. This type of a development is called a linear development. In the plays of the theatre of absurd, the structure is often exactly the opposite. We have instead a circular structure and most aspects of this drama support this circular structure in one way or another. So, lack of plot. Plot is a structure of interrelated actions in the story, and there is in Waiting for Godot there is no beginning, middle, or end in the play, and all characters we see that in both acts they are doing meaningless activities. There are no purpose in their conversation or anything. And the dialogue of Estragon, nothing can to be done. It's represent the whole meaning of the play. Nothing is done in the play. Setting. The setting of the play reminds the life of human beings. After the World War, life of human beings are hopeless and it's a very sad life. The setting is the same and the time is the same in both acts. Each act begins early in the morning, just as the trams are awakening and both acts close with the moon having risen. The action takes place in exactly the same landscape, a lonely, isolated road with one single tree. In the second act, there are some leaves on the tree, but from the viewpoint of the audience, the setting is exactly the same. We are never told where this road is located. All we know is that the action of the play unfolds on this lonely road. So the setting of the play symbolizes the condition after World War. So thanks for hearing me, and now I would like to invite Gayatri Nimavat.
So, on the reading of psychoanalytical, waiting is mere interpretation of Sigmund Freud's ideology of mind, and Freud says in his essay Interpretation of Dreams that how dreams reflect our mental personality. Here we found various situation, and we could find the psychoanalytical reading through that situation. Like Nightmare of Estragon contain flashback and horrific event that has happened in Vladimir and Estragon's life. Then other is it reflect that Estragon suffer with the post traumatic stress disorder. Then other is Freud talks about jagged thoughts, breaks and pauses. Likewise, Vladimir lost in his thoughts. He takes long pauses and cannot complete his sentences. We could find the various and so many pauses in this entire play. This shows that his mental personality is brutally affected due to the World War II. Then Vladimir represents a mental decay in the head. He constantly knocking on his head, which is symbolic of thinking. Then, in the essay of Anatomy of Mental Personality, Sigmund Freud was discussing about the three part id, ego, and superego. We could find in this play also by various characters, like Estragon symbolized the id, Vladimir symbolized the ego, and Godot symbolized the superego. Estragon behaves with his impulses throughout the play as id does. Here we can find id, ego, and superego. Then Vladimir is rational character in the play, and Godot is God, like figure having such kind of norms and rules. Then we can find numerous interpretation in this play, like ethical, existentialism, absurdity, postmodernist, religion, and political. We discuss religious interpretation and political interpretation of this play. Religious interpretation posit Vladimir and Estragon as humanity waiting for the elusive return of a savior. An extension of this makes Pozzo into the Pope and Lucky into the faithful. The faithful are then viewed as a cheaper of God cut short by the human intolerance. The twisted tree can alternatively represent either the tree of death, the tree of life, the tree of Judas, or the tree of knowledge. Then political interpretation, especially by the two character, we could find the political interpretation by Lucky and Pozzo. So political interpretation also abound. Some reviewer hold that the relationship between Pozzo and Lucky is that of a capitalist to his labor. This Marxist interpretation is understandable given that in the second act Pozzo is blind to what is happening around him, and Lucky is mute to protest his treatment. And one another interesting interpretation is that Lucky's name is Lucky, but he is not lucky throughout the play. But if we reading it deeply, then we could find that he is the most lucky guy in the play. That Lucky received his name because he is lucky in the context of the play. Since most of the play is spent trying to find things to do to pass the time, Lucky is lucky because his actions are determined absolutely by Pozzo. Pozzo, on the other hand, is unlucky because he not only needs to pass his own time but must find things for Lucky to do. Then memory's role in the play. I want to add one thing that in the yesterday's expert class, Dr. Vinod sir also referred this play, Waiting for Godot by Samuel Beckett, and he said that this type of play are representing the world is endless. Everything is upon us. We do whatever we want to do. Everything is upon us. World is endless. Then here is the memory role in the play. Uh, it might seem strange to the readers why the characters can remember far back into the past but not what occurred yesterday. We could find in this play this that every character is forgetting in sometimes, in few times. And from playing with the mind of the characters, every yesterday just another normal day because of the memories that are randomly cleared. There is no progression in the play. That's why they are stuck in an unending cycle of action. They wait for Godot every day at the same spot. They play the same games and ask similar questions, which in turn repeats every day they spend together. Then this is a tragicomedy, and we could find by various examples also in this play. Fletcher, in his preface to the Faithful Shepherd, he defined the term of tragicomedy, that a tragicomedy is not so called in the respect to mirth and killing, but in respect it wants death, which is enough to make it no tragedy. Shakespeare's Cymbeline and The Winter's Tale may also be categorized as tragicomedy. The English edition of Waiting for Godot, published in 1956, described the play as a tragicomedy in two acts. All musical devices are employed to create laughter in such a tragic situation of waiting. And the other examples of tragicomedy in the text: when Estragon says, "Let's go," and Vladimir says, we cannot. And Estragon replies, "Why not?" Vladimir says, "We are waiting for Godot." They do not move. Then other is Waiting for Godot has several moments of anguish and despair. Someone beats Estragons daily, and Estragon says, "Beat me." Certainly, they beat me. That is a world of negation in which inactivity is the safest course, as Estragon says, "Do not let us do anything. It's safer." Through this dialogue, we can find the tragic comedy. The situation of them are tragical as well as comedy. In the various situation we could find tragicomedy. The situation of Lucky is quite pathetic, especially in view of his glorious past, as Pozo describes it. His speech tells us that in his sonar moments, Lucky must have brooded deeply over the anguish of the human situation. Then other is every activity is a mockery of human existence. Then the changing of farce into absurdity bring a lot of tragic sentiment in the play. Then the climax of Bucket's tragicomedy is the role of Lucky. We could find the most tragic character is Lucky. The total effect of his commingling of tragic and comic suggests that Samuel Beckett is a realistic dramatist who looks at life from a positive or a pessimist and as an optimist. These are work citation. Thank you.